Now, Israeli Defence Minister Benny Gantz is in New Delhi to strengthen the security ties between the two nations. He is scheduled to meet Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi after meeting his Indian counterpart Rajnath Singh. Now, both sides will sign a document aimed at deepening security relations and marking 30 years of diplomatic and defence ties between Israel and India. The Israeli Defence Minister is accompanied by the country's Chief of Staff, Mayan Israeli, the head of the Directorate for International Defence Cooperation, Brigadier General Rez Kulas, the Director of Policy and Political Military Bureau, Dror Shalom, and Military Secretary B.G. Yakidol. Now, Gantz started by paying homage at the National War Memorial in New Delhi, followed by talks with Rajnath Singh. And at around 5 p.m. IST, Gantz will meet Indian Prime Minister Modi. He was also given a Guard of Honor. The Israeli Defense Minister was scheduled to visit New Delhi in March of this year. However, his visit was postponed after he contracted coronavirus, and in the backdrop of terror attacks in Israel that left dozens dead. Now, Gantz's visit comes amid celebrations marking 30 years of establishing of diplomatic ties between both nations. India and Israel established full diplomatic relations on the 29th of January 1992. Earlier this year, a commemorative logo was launched to mark 3 decades of ties. In February, iconic buildings in India and Israel, including the Gateway of India in Mumbai, the Timurti Chowk in Delhi, and the Masada Fortress in Israel, were lit up in Indian and Israeli colors. For more insight on this, our principal diplomatic correspondent, Sudan Sybil, has sent us this report. Listen in.
The Israeli Defence Minister is here in Delhi, and he is holding talks with the Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. The meeting is happening in that building behind me, and we know that his visit comes at a time when both India and Israel are celebrating 30 years of establishment of relationship. It was in the year 1992 that both sides had established formal diplomatic relationship, and this year we'll see a lot of high-level engagement. In fact, the Israeli Prime Minister was expected to visit New Delhi earlier this year, but he could not do so because he was confirmed with COVID. But nonetheless, the Israeli Defence Minister is here, and a key security pact is expected to be signed. But essentially, this is symbolic of the close defence relationship between India and Israel. In fact, growing defence relationship. Last year saw the then Indian Army Chief and the Air Chief visiting Israel, and the Indian Air Force participating in Israeli exercises. Earlier we saw the Indian Navy ships visiting Israeli ports, and we will see more engagements. In fact, at the end of the day, the outcomes is something that everyone will be keenly noticing. With video journalist Chandrasekhar Siddhant Sipal for WION in New Delhi.